morning, afternoon, evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm George Moss again here at allpointstv.com, and the program is called What's Going On, and we come on normally at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I am always delighted to have a special guest to come into the studio and will spend some time with us doing the program here at allpointstv.com. We have a very special, in my estimation, we have a very special guest here this afternoon. And that guest is none other than one of our partners here at the studio, and that is Mr. Henry Hatter. And Henry, I'm really delighted to have you as a guest.
Thank you, George. Okay. I'm glad to be here.
Whenever I can have someone of that caliber at the studio, we let them sit over to the right. I know I'm like sit over to the right, so people won't get confused about what side of the political divide I'm on. But it's good to have you here. I want to first of all, start with the national issues, and we'll come down and talk about the local elections coming up.
Sure.
Tuesday next week, and it's going to be a big
But event. I want to remind your guests that we are both conservatives. You're just to the right more than I am. Okay.
Henry, I got to ask you about that. I have to ask you, and that's one of the questions I came to the studio to ask because I'm learning this for myself. Do you consider yourself to be a conservative or a black Republican?
No, conservative.
Conservative?
Yeah.
Now you've been a Republican for a lot of years.
Yes, yes.
So are you a conservative first and a Republican, and how does that?
Well, usually I don't think of a divide between conservatives and blacks.
Okay.
You know, I would like to, but everybody should know who I am now. I'm black.
Oh, they know.
And white people know that I'm black, and there's just no other way you can characterize it. Although you may choose a lot of venues for describing me, but I am exactly what that is, and that's a conservative who's black. Yeah,
did you hear Charlie Pride's answer? They asked him, how do you feel about being the first African-American country music singer? And he answered, he said, I feel the same way as I felt when I was the first colored country music singer, the first Negro. Yeah. He went through all the keys.
And he couldn't tell the difference, could he?
And he said, I'm still colored. Yeah. So, I know what you're saying there, but it's so special when you find some black conservatives, quite frankly, because 90% of the blacks in this country have a liberal outlook, and to me that's problematical.
But what they believe with respect to religion is highly conservative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you look at the values, they are conservative values. When you go to the voting booths and look at the voting record, it's all
conservative.
Yeah, all down the line, they're voting liberals, and the Democratic Party a base 90% of them are. I don't know how we arrived there because we started out with a Republican base.
Yes.
And then the turn began. When did you see the turn occurring as far as the Republicans, blacks are Republicans, and now they are voting in large and large percentages for Democrats? Did you see that with the Roosevelt?
Yeah, that's what I've been told. I've been told that by historians, by blacks, and by whites. And when they're both on the same track, even though they're parallel tracks, that's probably leads closer to the truth than not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have been surprised by some of the vigor in which the criticism come because they find out that you're not carrying the party line. I'm not a party line person. I'm a person that believes in principles. And whichever party is carrying that principle or whatever candidate is supporting that principle, I'm behind that candidate.
Sure.
And it's not really about parties, about what the candidates stand for. But most of my ideas are embedded in what the Republican Party is doing right now.
Well, you and I are both on the same page, although I'm labeled a Republican, but I vote the way I want to. One thing that I differ from Democrats is that I have the freedom to choose. If I want to vote for a Democrat, I choose. I say that publicly. I say that in the polls. I say that to other people who have an interest.
How much vilification have you gotten over the years? Because I know when you were way back there, we knew you as a Republican.
And Uncle Tom.
And the name calling and all of that. How do you handle that, by the way? Because that's a lot of what we get from this side.
Well, you had to handle that through just being yourself and not changing not being intimidated or coerced by other people who criticize you. Because there are other people looking at you, and everybody wants a hero. Everybody needs a hero. They watch people who have good self-control, good, are aware educationally in a lot of things, have a profound degree of knowledge. And that I would say I do.
You do have that. Has it ever bothered you, though, in terms of the caricature of your views and the name calling that you get? Has that ever bothered you, or just simply have never paid any attention to it?
Well, it didn't bother me so much, and I tell you this is the truth. But it did bother my wife.
She wanted to go in a separate.
It did bother my wife and my kids. You know. They wanted me to be known as a good guy, well-loved, and will go to heaven at the end of my tenure here. But I wasn't looking at that.
Yeah.
I was here competing with the world that God has given me to live in.
Yeah. I've been impressed with you, Henry, because, you know, I stepped up into your shoes a little bit. Not deliberately so, just the fact that I have a principle to stand on. I really haven't been bothered by the name calling. I mean, it's amazing to me that people who think they have something to teach me. And I'm a historian. I do a lot of study each day. When I get up in the morning, my day starts off with getting up and doing 3 hours of reading. I make that a habit. And then I go and get me a cup of coffee and come back and do another hour. Then I get on Facebook and start hollering on Facebook. But it always amazed me when people think they're going to come on the networks that I'm on, such as Facebook, and they're going to teach me something about a field that I've been in for the last 40 years and have taught it for that period of time. But there is this caricature that if you're not towing the party line, that you are really selling out. And that's amazing to me also. So, but you still very much as a Trojan.
But, you know, speaking of that, George, you know, the party understands that this is the role that I must play. You don't go anywhere else to find people who would change their position in parties or their voting position except the Democrats. How could I be a catalyst for the Republican Party and have no audience, no advocates? I have to touch out to people who would change. Otherwise, I can be of no benefit to the party. But the party knows that I have influence among whites and among blacks.
You have a lot of influence.
And this is what you need to do. And generally, people will come and ask me, well, who should I vote for? And my mother was always that way. And people say, oh, no, I never vote for anybody. I make up my own decision. But many, many very bad decisions have been made in the past by people who individually make up their own.
Were you ever a Democrat? Did you?
No.
You never were a Democrat?
Was a Democrat.
But you've signed up as a Republican?
Yeah, this was when I was when I was in high school. I met Eisenhower. And I really liked him. I loved the Second World War and all of the escapades of the Second World War. And as a result of meeting Eisenhower downtown on the courthouse steps with other kids, and he shook my hand.
Really?
And and my uncles were Republicans back in 1932.
So you were raised in the Republican, that's very unusual.
Yeah, 1932.
1932.
And my uncle always gave us a quarter each time he saw us. And he smoked a cigar. Very stable man. Had a gold tooth right there to indicate his wealth or his stability in the community. And I wanted to be like someone that has capacity to do something. And I came from a very well-known family that was prominent in Flint for a number of years. That was the McIntyre family. And the McIntyre family started your cab company in 1947. After they came out of the war, and the one who started the cab company was wounded in Italy in 1943, in that first contingent that landed in Italy. And when he came back, he says, I'll never go back to the farm. I'll never be stepped on anymore, but I'm going to stand, and I'm going to do something with my life. And his brothers, who had been in the war also, joined them, and they formed your cab company on Harrison and Kenilworth Street in Flint, Michigan, on the south side.
Really?
Just kitty corner across from Clark School.
I never asked you. Now, were you born in Genesee County? You weren't born here.
No, I was born in Alabama, but all my brothers and sisters were born here.
You were born in Alabama. What part of Alabama?
A little town called Livingston.
Okay. Yes, I'm from Birmingham, and I came here in 1966 out of Knoxville, located in Tennessee, and that's my. That's how I arrived here.
I started school here.
In this Democratic stronghold. I don't know how I arrived here.
But I started school right at Clark School, so that's how young I was.
Yeah. I was asking about whether or not the name calling has bothered you. It doesn't bother me. In fact, I kind of cherish the fact that I don't think you have character when you allow people to bend you to their will because they disagree with some of your positions. I think your character is developed in stress. And the name calling just emboldens me and makes me more, it certainly makes me more determined to make sure that when I take a position that I'm studying the position I'm taking and that I can defend that position. As long as I feel I'm telling the truth, I don't get bothered.
You and I have had the same kind of career path as we kind of rose up. When I went to, my dad worked for Buick, and on weekends we went out and we hauled junk. We cleaned out basements and stuff like that, and people always gave us lots of books, and I spent a lot of time reading those books like Deerslayer, Call of the Wild, Moby Dick, and all of those, Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn. I read those and I loved those books. Mm-hmm. There was a lot I loved about, even the heroes in Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer. I connected with them. On the big river with Big John and so on and so forth. But I loved outdoor stories. So when I got to Whittier, I was probably one of the whitest read students at Whittier. Mm-hmm. And I was catapulted into math and science and into high-level English and Latin and stuff like that. But if you had asked me would I ever have planned to go into that, or I would ever be in those classes, I would say no.
Did you start reading those books when you were in elementary school?
Yeah.
You read in elementary school?
Yeah, yes.
About what grade are we talking about?
I'd say about 5th grade.
About 5th grade?
Yeah, 5th and
6th. Let me guess, you didn't have a lot of TV sets in your household.
Didn't have any.
Now they have TVs in every room. We read as an alternative to entertainment, didn't we? We didn't have a lot of televisions. I know in my neighborhood we had one TV set in the whole neighborhood, and we would go over to this one friend's house. His dad was better employed than a lot of our parents were, and they had a TV set. We'd go over there and watch The Lone Ranger. That was
sure.
Big. But in the absence of TVs in the houses, you read more. Comic books. I read all the classics in comic book form, and Julius Verne's work and some of the Monte Cristo, all those classics. And I think when we went to school, because we were those persons that had kind of educated ourselves away from school, going to the classroom was an easier road to hoe because we had learned so much on our own. Yeah, in those times, we had an opportunity to go into the white man's psychic because he really read the books. And although we were also transformed by them, but we learned a lot from them. Mm-hmm. And you and I have had the same kind of experiences. You said you were a very a good reader, and you read a lot during your time. So did I. And when I got to Whittier, I was well recognized as equal to or better than some of my white peers. Mm-hmm. And that was rather unusual. One thing we share in common is our support of this president. Let me ask you, what kind of grade would you give to President Trump at this point? Because I believe in the platform, the Republican platform, and I do believe in the mission that President Trump is trying to accomplish. First, he wants us to be a nation that's capable of hiring our own people. He wants it to be safe from intruders from the outside. Mm-hmm. He wants us to aspire to
greater education, and particularly black people. And I must say this because a lot of people don't pay any attention to what Donald Trump says because they dislike him, because other people say they dislike him, and they turn their cannons on him, and they don't see the issue that comes from him. And I believe that Donald Trump he will change the nation so that we benefit. And we will, in 2050, be a large part of the leadership of this country, arithmetically and politically. So we need to get our kids ready for that. Donald Trump is going to help us lead ourselves that way. And with the platform that he creates for us, we're going to help him. We're going to sweep kids into this platform so they rise and be prepared and second best to nobody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I so far have given very high marks. It's been very difficult to get some of his programs through, but in terms of the leadership skills that he's brought to the political process, it's been really amazing to me that he's been able to get the things done that he's gotten done. And I see a lot of great things that can happen in the next 3 years before this administration is up for re-election. I think he's going to be elected to a second term, as a matter of fact.
Yes, I do.
The way things are going.
And you know, my daughter is a Trump appointee.
Okay, in what position?
She is appointed to the Department of Energy.
She's in Washington?
Yeah, she's in Washington at 1100 Independence.
Okay. And
so when you go there, let me know, and she'll give you the red carpet treatment.
I'm glad you said that.
At least for her office.
I'm gonna take you up on that because I'll be in Washington. I'm going to the museum.
Oh, good.
Sometime. I just heard about it from my neighbor that went there about 2 weeks ago. He told me to make sure I stay at least 2 days because the museum is so extensive. It's a 4th-floor museum. And he said so much to see there, so much to read in the museum. You can't do it in one day.
Well, we have a large picture. It's a 5 by 4 of Abraham Lincoln. And we were going to donate that to the Black Historic Museum in Washington, in Detroit. But then when they went through the financial problems there, I just kept the picture.
Really?
And we do have some things I would like to donate. And this picture came to me from Midland. It had been in an attic since 1895. And the people died years later, and it was given to one of the granddaughters, but she didn't want it. And so she gave it to me.
Right. You know, Henry, you were making news, I think, in terms of national news. Both you and your daughter were electors.
Yes.
In the Republican caucus, the Electoral College in Michigan. And so you were 2 of the 16 electoral votes we have in the state.
Yeah, that was 1/8 of the vote.
1/8 of the vote.
Of Michigan.
One family was 1/8 of the vote.
My daughter and I, 1/8 of the vote, guys.
Were you the only blacks that were electors? This time around, I mean?
Yes.
The only blacks in the Michigan delegation. And that must have been really something with them trying to head Donald Trump off at the pass once they were not able to stop him otherwise with these other interventions they were trying to employ. And when that didn't work, they were saying the Electoral College was, in fact, supposed to be the last stand in order to stop someone of his caliber, whatever that means. And you went through a lot. Did you have to go through a lot of people out there hollering and trying to get you?
Oh, yes.
A lot of demonstrators?
Trying to turn the car over.
Really? Trying to turn the car over?
But these are dramatic situations that don't occur once in a lifetime. But it was kind of fun looking out and watching them with sticks and stuff like that.
Were you frightened by that, though? These people out there?
Well, I could imagine what the Ku Klux Klan was like in the South then.
Can't remind you of that.
Yeah. Well, I've never been in a Ku Klux Klan situation, but I can imagine what it's like.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't consider myself unique here, George, but what we achieved, my daughter and I, is so unique, and it's far beyond our ability to grasp. But we were featured in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Chicago Tribune, the Kansas City Times.
Really?
And
this
Detroit
past time? On this past? Okay.
Yeah. And that was something. We became now trivia for the next generation long after we're gone. someone will ask this question: has there ever been a member of two families elected to the same electoral college in the same year? And so you'll have to look back to 2016, and you will find Henry and Kelly Hatter. Mm-hmm. It has never happened before. All of the people who have ever voted for presidents, my daughter Kelly and I are the only ones. And you know,
the only ones that
have ever been on the same electoral college at the same time in the same year.
A father and daughter.
Yes.
Both electors. Had never happened before.
Never.
In the history of the country?
In the history of the country. And you know,
I'm ready to build a statue right now, Henry. I'm ready to build a statue outside the studio.
Oh, well, that's rather unique, and as people, it's not as unique to me because we just happened to be there and we did that, but anybody else could have. But it was significant because other people said to me, and they said to the country, that they'll never get enough blacks in the Republican Party to fill a telephone booth. And we filled the delegation.
1/8 of the delegates.
Yeah, 1/8 of the delegates from Michigan.
That's quite an accomplishment. How do you feel about the party's label? You know, a lot of people think Republicans are racist just because they don't have the numbers in the Republican Party, and by the absence of blacks participating in the Republican Party, they say the party is racist because if they were not, then blacks would be, you know, more fully engaged.
Yeah, well, that's rather unique. I've been called the racism. Most of the racism that I've seen came from my own race, because the white people did endure me as a token. I was called a token, and but yet I was its party chair.
Yeah,
I had achieved things that many of the whites had not achieved, and you know, people do those kind of things, but I'm not sure. That's to be mean, but not to degrade me or demean me in any way, but it's because they were envious. And I think that blacks should accept this as a great accomplishment. You'll probably never see that even in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I give you a lot of credit for that. And when they say a token of what? What are these persons doing pioneering work tokens of? They're tokens of progress, aren't they? In terms of taking something that doesn't have a lot of participation and widening the participation. Yeah. That's a good thing.
Yeah, a token is considered a small piece, just an insignificant piece, a token, a bit.
Yeah.
But as only in that generation, but as generations become and go, you rise.
Yes. Wasn't Rosa Parks a token? I mean, nobody was riding in front of the bus. You know, I take these slings and arrows and look at it as, you know, like a caviar. It's like you're setting the table for the rest of the stuff. It's an hors d'oeuvre. I mean, you are pioneering some things that no one else is in fact engaged in. It allows others to widen their participation. That's a good thing.
Yes.
And they turn that into a negative. I don't have any apologies to make. I just think that standing on character, once you have a principal position and you're willing to stand up for it, it just builds your character. And I don't have any regrets. No,
I don't. And today, as I look back over my career, I'm very proud of what I've accomplished, what I've achieved. Only through not having a platform to stand on, that of a platform that looks like me, acts like me, lives with me. I've never had that kind of platform, but I had influence because I was the Republican Party chair, and I acted. And once that position is bestowed on you, that gives you powerful authority. If you can't use that, you got to leave that back for the band.
Yeah,
but that position, very powerful.
Yes, Henry. Let me ask you. You were an elector. Are your expenses paid by the Republican Party when you go like to Lansing?
No.
You had to pay your own expenses?
No, you pay your own. The public won't like that. At least in the Republican Party, they wouldn't. They think that you should pay for your own stuff.
You know, I've read the 85 Federalist Papers, and I know exactly what James Madison and Alexander Hamilton, who wrote 80 of the 85 Federalist Papers, I've read those, and I knew exactly what they intended the Electoral College to do, and I see it as an act of brilliance. You know, we were talking about this once before. And I'm bothered by people that don't understand the intent of the Electoral College and do not understand it and want to go to a majoritarian-based election of the national office holder. Only the president is a national office holder. The rest of them are within the state. They're going to have we got a break coming up right now, Henry. That's what we're hearing the music for. We're taking a break now for 92.1. We're very glad to have WFOB with us, and we'll take a break for 4 minutes. While we are taking a break, we will continue our program on this end, and when you come back, we will welcome you back in 4 minutes. And so John's letting us know that that break is now going on with the station. Okay, we're going to continue the program here at allpointstv.com, and that's just to let us, our other listeners, to take their time out to do their commercial pieces, and they'll be back with us in 4 minutes. We're glad to have you with us as always, and want you to stay tuned for the next 30 minutes or so as we wrap this up. I'm going to get into not only the local event, which is election coming up here for the mayor's position, but we're going to talk a little bit about some of the politics on the national level with Mr. Henry Hatter. And Henry, we're glad to have you again here at the studio.
Thank you.
I cannot believe the things that you've achieved. And I was talking to you once before about the Electoral College, and we were saying that this was an act of brilliance on the part of the framers.
Oh, without a doubt.
So how do you see the Electoral College's intent? What was the idea behind it in terms of why it was set up?
Well, you know, there are multiple reasons why it was set up, and one of those was, of course, they didn't have a communication system. Everything had to be carried. There were road agents, there were insurgents, there were 5 different countries on this continent at the same time. Mm-hmm. Even where Americans had declared independence, they were still here. Mm-hmm. The British were still down at Detroit.
Mm-hmm. Interesting point.
At Fort Detroit. Mm-hmm. And yet we were claimed a country. Then this was, that was when it was a territory, Northwest Territory. Mm-hmm. But we couldn't get them out. Mm-hmm. But we had to fight the War of 1812 to get rid of the British.
I see it in the same way, and I think that the intent of in Federalist Paper number 9, which was written by Alexander Hamilton, and then 10 was continuation of Hamilton's point of view, which was written by James Madison. That was James Madison's first piece, which was Federalist Paper 10, and they were talking about factions, and they were really concerned about majority factions. If you have a faction that is the majority and it gets its will because it has the numbers, it can become oppressive of the minority faction, which can't get a hearing. Mm-hmm. And so the Electoral College lets the small states have a reasonable voice at the table, because this voice must be included in how we're going to eventually count the delegates to determine who the president is going to be. Yeah. And that voice is heard, although it's a small state. We now have rejoining us again the listeners at 92.1, and we're glad to have you back after your 4-minute break. And we have not left too far from where we were when you went away to doing the things that 92.1 does. We're glad to have you back again with us here at allpointstv.com. Henry, let's talk a little bit about what's going on now in Washington, and we'll come back to the local community for the last 5 minutes of the program or so. You heard this morning there was an indictment.
Yes.
Of Manafort, and we have been hearing over the weekend that indictment was coming down. Did you know it was going to be Manafort that we're talking about?
No, I didn't know for sure. I was just hoping that it wasn't against the president.
Mm-hmm. They seem like they're trying to use the bottom tier people in his administration. Of course, Manafort is out now, and so is Flynn. But they seem like they want to start at the bottom and try to work their way up to target Trump. We know they do not like this man being in that office, and they've tried everything up to this point to try to. And what bothers me is they're trying to undo an election in this country. Yeah, we had a duly.
If election. We do, we'll have revolution. I'm sorry. That's the only way that they can dethrone the sitting president if the people have elected him.
Do you really think that's possible, though? I just think there's so many people might be outraged by it, but they're so dependent upon the way things are run that they would be real hesitant to actually rebel openly like that. I think that's what would be the scenario.
Well, what do you think about that, Henry? You think that the people would actually rebel if they removed Donald Trump?
Oh, we would have chaos. You know, did you ever read John Hagel?
John Hagel, George Hagel.
George Hagel.
Okay.
He wrote about 1650 about the fact that Americans could never live without a king because they needed a strong authority to keep people together, and they needed to know how to get rid of some people when they don't work in conjunction with the majority, and also there were others like that came later, and they professed the same thing. But when Hamilton and others got together and put together the Constitution, and they wrote the 85 papers, Federalist Papers. They talked about what the potential was for doing something other than doing what they had proposed in the Federalist Papers, and why we had the right kind of constitutional government that was both based on republicanism and democracy. Okay. So, and they said it would work because of the way it was set up. Our republics would remain small. No, the city-states would remain small, and the republics could be larger because they could be they could be governed by a central organization like our United States Constitution and the government itself. But if we have not had the combination of republics and small governments like our states, it would probably not have survived.
I'm impressed with the people in that room. They met there in Philadelphia starting on June 25th, 1787, and stayed in that room almost 3 months. It was 8 days short of 3 months, up until September the 17th of that year. And I'm just amazed at what they were able to presuppose and as an idea of government that had never been instituted in the world. You know, they had to create something new. They were aware of history and the failures that had occurred in history, and they were trying to, with their knowledge of it, fix that in terms of what their task was at the convention. And it's amazing how they put so much intellectual wherewithal in the discoveries that they had to come into contact with. What were the mistakes they made with the Articles of Confederation? Why that didn't work? It was an experiment to weaken the central government, but it so weakened that they could not respond to national crises. And then to put a government in place where you would have a stronger central government, but how do you weaken it so it cannot become tyrannical of the government that had just gotten through fighting against that tyranny of the...
You confederated it.
You confederated. And it's just amazing that they came up with this experiment, and I don't want to see us lose that, because...
Once you lose it, it ain't coming back. It will never come back.
Yeah.
The Romans and the Greeks and the English all had that kind of government. It rose and fell for years as a kind of sinusoidal across time until the Americans came up with our form of government. And it looks as though we may get another 100 years out of this, but we need to be careful. If our kids are going to have a democratic, free society after 2050, when our country will be divided in racial groups by their numbers, we need to put something together now so that we can all learn to work together, because that could be either good or bad.
Yeah.
We need to learn how to live together and learn how to govern together.
How pivotal a moment do you think this is in terms of, you said we may get another 100 years out of this. How much of a pivotal moment is this in our history in terms of the longevity of this experiment, do you see? You see this as a pivotal moment in our history?
Yeah, I do. I think that as we move closer to a segment of balance in population, which we hope that will stabilize how we get along with each other, But that could go just the opposite way. We have to think this through, and we have to do it much like the founding fathers did. They thought through this stuff scientifically. They looked for evidence of where that had broken apart in the past.
You're right.
And then what they factored out the parts that caused the breakdown. And as we move toward 2050, there are places where the ruling factions, I'll call them factions for right now, but those factions are either good or bad. Faction is something that uses its own view of things in degradation of what is viewed for the common person, common ground, where we all agree, or where we all benefit from the same principles and actions and resources and all of that stuff. But factions are those people who clutter stuff for themselves. And we need to figure out how to do that now. And I'm sure that many Hispanics and many Black Americans will have their views of retaliation. That is what I'm concerned about. And I'm concerned also about the white part of you. Like, for example, there's some concern about whether we are, whether some of the attacks on blacks are due to factions like the Klan, who wants, and we talk about all the time of shipping blacks back to Africa or deporting them or whatever, and which is unrealistic. You can't deport blacks. You can't. We were born here. That's impossible. So we need to. That's what concerns me, and these are issues that have not been laid down on the table yet. We need to have this discussion. We need to have a discussion about race, but we need to have the right people at the table, George. There's absolutely everybody who, just because you have freedom and because you have influence or because you have a title, you may not be the right person for the table. You have to be like people like Madison and Washington and Jefferson and all of those folks. You got to be people who believe in serving the common good.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you a question about racism as an impediment. I'm going to ask you what percentage you think of that, of black people's problems, racism, but I want to make this statement first. I've been in 17 countries in Africa, and I can tell you that I've not been in one country in Africa that black people in this country would fit into. You know, this idea you can pick up the pieces, and 300 years after you left, your ancestors left, and you're on these shores, and nothing changed, and you can go right back as if you were the ones that left in the first place. I mean, you weren't the ones that left, right? So you're not going back to anything because you weren't the ones that left it. That's your, those were the ones that were your progenitors. So this idea that they would just pick up the pieces and just go back home, I can tell you that home is here. That's what stop lying about it.
I agree with you so much. Look, we are new people. We are people who were created in this country from different bloods.
Yes, we were.
Yeah, and the folks in Africa don't want you to call yourself African Americans once you go back to Africa.
I found that out.
You know, they hate that.
Yeah.
And we don't get it yet.
You don't get it, Henry. Henry, I can tell you a story about that. I was in Nigeria. I was in Owerri, and they were arguing that we had taken some American students over. They were arguing about the term African American, and they were just in a lively argument with the Nigerians. They're going to tell them that they were African Americans, and the Nigerians were saying no. So I came down the stairs and I saw all these lively conversations going on. Everybody was kind of animated and everybody was emotionally wound up. So they said, Professor Moss, come over here. Don't tell them, this American student, tell them, don't we call ourselves African Americans? I went over there and I said, yes, we do, but that's not what they're arguing with you about. What they're arguing with you about is that they don't accept it.
No, and it doesn't make sense anyway.
Yeah, right. African, you got a black face. That's your racial and your African entitlement. But in terms of any of the connections to the culture, you know, we can lie about it and make believe that I'm an Igbo chief, and when I went through my ritual in Owerri, they explained everything to me, and I was confused once it was over.
And that's tantamount to the discussion that go on between people who live in South America, like from Mexico down, and people who live in the United States. We call ourselves Americans, but that is deflating to people who live in Mexico,
yes,
and all of those Venezuela and Colombia and so on and so forth. They said you are North Americans, you from the United States. We don't ascribe to you being Americans because we're Americans.
That's exactly right. Yeah. My dad couldn't understand that. My dad lived in Detroit. We lived in Birmingham. We visited our father 2 weeks in the summertime, and we were crossing back over from Canada, coming back to the United States, and they asked him his nationality. He said American, and they wanted to know what country. He couldn't understand it because he thought he had given them the country by saying he was from America. Mm-hmm. And they want to know, and they're looking at him saying, "What country?"
Yeah.
He was very confused. And I'm sitting in the back seat there. I'm maybe about 8 or 9 years old, and I'm not getting what they don't understand about that. But you're right. That designation that you are American is kind of disingenuous, isn't it?
Well, it berates other people who are Americans.
Americans also, Central Americans.
If you're a Mexican or Venezuelan or Colombian,
you're American.
You're American.
These are the Americans. And
we
want to think the whole thing as if that's the identity of the whole group.
Yeah, we're from the Los Unidos Estados Unidos del Norte, United States of America, as Mexicans would say it.
Mm-hmm. There are a lot of identity issues that you realize from the outside of the country. And when you go outside, you see it a lot more clearly. But I have been in those countries, and I do see, and I've asked myself this question: do I see black folks being able to just pick up, let's go back home, and we're gonna sit our stuff down and move on from there?
Don't worry, you have to be invited first.
Right, and not waving us down. Henry, I think we both agree that Donald Trump has been maligned a lot more than he should be, and he's doing a job that he has not gotten a lot of appreciation for. Yes. So I asked you earlier, what grade would you give? What grade would you give him right now?
I would give Donald Trump a grade of B+. Mm-hmm. And the reason he doesn't get an A is because he sometimes makes mistakes in facts.
Do you want him off of Twitter?
He could do less of the Twitter.
Mm-hmm. You don't want him to close the account down?
No, I don't want him to close the account down because that's his prerogative. Mm-hmm. He speaks for the American people.
Ironically, he's one of the most transparent presidents out there because he doesn't go through the filters of press agents and all that. And people should like that because good or bad, if he's good, then it's all up on him. If it's bad, they give him the rope to hang himself with. But no, it's like I think it's a good thing that I think he should back down a lot of stuff he says or rethink it out better. I really do agree with that.
Yeah, I think that we would both agree that he could tone it down a little bit.
Yeah. A little bit.
Yeah, and I don't think that everything that he talks about is worthwhile. Some of it is trivial.
Yeah. Do you think that President Trump is thin-skinned or he's just a fighter?
No, I don't think he's skinned. That man has the biggest ego I've ever seen in my life. He has an ego. I didn't think God made any egos that big.
You think his ego? Now, when you met him, did you think his ego was?
No, he's completely different.
Very, very.
But very authoritative and inclusive and free-flowing, stable, secure, and comfortable.
What about charismatic?
Oh, yeah. Yes, he was. When he met us individually, he's just like you and me.
Very gregarious person.
But people get the idea that because somebody said that this man is a racist, he's a sexist, he doesn't like baboons, he doesn't like this or that, or so on and so forth, and never met the man.
Well, I like Floyd Mayweather, who said that Donald Trump didn't become a racist until he became president. They want to target anyone that's Republican. I don't know why we have this idea we can dismiss anyone that's not in the party in which we vote. I don't think that Donald Trump is a racist anymore. successful than
No.
anyone else is in Washington.
Well, I
Probably
think
less so than most.
I think the fact is that most black people in this country believe that if you were a Republican, you're a white male,
Yeah. Okay.
mostly,
Mm-hmm.
and you're a white woman,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're black, you were just a person that flows along. You have no identity of your own. You're an Uncle Tom or whatever. But remember, people who are leaders and those who follow have strong images. And when you follow strong presidents like Bush and all of the others, and who I think are strong presidents, so of course I like President Kennedy as well. So, and I liked great Democrat presidents like Truman and all of those who did a good job. But when you follow a Republican, that kind of strength is still there. And I think that Trump is an unusual president. He does, nobody's ever done what he did. Of course, he challenged a lot of long-standing issues that were taboo to touch. You know, gender equity for one, race, religion, finance, stuff like that. He challenges people in all of those categories. Before, there were certain ways that we treated people with respect to race or with respect to economics. We kind of pushed people into the center ground where we talked finance, but they gave them no credit for being relevant and contributing. Like you see many blacks and Mexicans and other people now have wealth and they have money and they have influence. And I think that Trump allows those people to flow into those categories and become counted.
I think he's going to be a transcendent president. And what he's going to accomplish, I think, is going to be very great for this country. He really is a patriot, and that's where it starts for me. If you are a person that's pulling for the country, we just need to have people to stop beating on the country, and we can just simply be a cheerleader for the country. It will, of its own traditions, come out of anything it's in, because it has the integrity of its institutions. If they are maintained, then there's nothing that's beyond the pale for the American people.
Yeah, you know, I think that Donald Trump has really highlighted people who work for Wall Street and work for the media. Black people who work for the media, and Hispanics and everybody else. Those are some of the greatest anchor people and spokesmen for Wall Street and for businesses and education that I've ever seen. I didn't see that before. I would have never thought that we had as many people engaged in public policy as we do, until we take a look at how diverse we are when you talk about Trump.
I see. I don't get the impression that you are a football fan, but how do you feel about this kneeling? Are you a football fan?
Yes, I am.
Are you watching football games now?
Yeah.
So what is your feeling about this kneeling? Before
I don't like that at all. I think that we must first give our loyalty to the country, who gives us a Constitution and makes us equal to anybody else in the Constitution. If we don't feel it, it's our fault. Like everybody else who come here as immigrants, they automatically feel equal to everybody else. They go out and pursue wealth. They pursue a place in society, and yet we have difficulty doing that. It's our fault.
Now, they're kneeling because they're claiming there's so much racial inequity in the country. And I said I was going to ask you a question about what do you, in terms of percentage basis, what role, how much of a role does racism play in the lives of blacks as an impediment of them going forward, what you say?
Well, I don't see it. It plays a part, all right, but it's not a barrier. If I can make that distinction, barriers are where you can't get over, you can't get under, you can't go around, you can't go through. Racism it doesn't have that barrier.
Did it ever have that barrier?
Oh yeah, I think it was close when people were killed and and disenfranchised and stuff like that. The first of the century, and of course when we were slaves, I shouldn't say we were slaves. There were 800,000 free blacks in this country when the war started, right?
Right.
How do I know whether I was a slave or not? Nobody can say that they were a slave. But even if I were a slave, then I would have been a good slave because I know how to work. I know how to make something of my own.
It's like even if that were the case, it's not that there's a genetic link between the enslavement of any of the ancestors that's passed down through the bloodstream to people today. I like a genetic inheritance. That we were slaves, and therefore it's nothing we can do today.
You want to be good at what you do.
Yes. I'll tell you why. I was poor. I was born into poverty. Poverty wasn't born in me, however. And what I was doing in that classroom, everyone was laughing how poor I was and how my clothes were raggedy and I didn't have the lunch money. But what they didn't realize, what I was doing in that classroom was making sure tomorrow would not be that position.
Yes.
I was there working myself out of it. They didn't understand that. I wasn't there paying attention, but I saw that as an instrument through which I can get out of the condition I was in. Because I was determined that was not going to be my adulthood. It was my childhood only because my parents were poor. And I was determined to work myself out of it. And I didn't care what they said.
Do you know Dr. Green and Dr. McAllister at Kettering?
I don't know them at Kettering.
They're PhDs. They teach chemistry. Dr. Green was the chair of the chemistry department. Dr. McAllister was the chair of the math department. They were reversed. Dr. McAllister was chairman of the chemistry department, but they're very, very erudite people. And the kids today who tried to trick him in creating all kind of problems that he couldn't possibly solve, and they knew that this problem could be solved. And Dr. McAllister would and Dr. Green would say, well, this problem has no solution. And I've talked to some of his students who had Dr. Green at that time, and they said they send back now hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars to the foundation that Dr. Green and Dr. McAllister had created. And Dr. McAllister may hear this conversation today, and maybe Dr. Green, but two very profound professors who I think did well. And they well represent us. Even though we have the same degree, we have educations just like them, but we may not be in the position that support their the things that they teach. But they were very fond. We'd be very proud of them. And he knew that I was a member of the Republican Party, but I was never criticized.
I don't see any stigma attached to what your affiliations. One of the person that is one of the state representatives here told me in one of the radio shows we did. He said, "I don't care who a person votes for," and my level of respect for him went way up. Because he's a Democrat, he has an office as a Democratic office holder, and whenever someone can be that open, I respect that. Because
was this a black individual?
Black.
I know who it is. Yeah, I know who it is. Because he's been very deliberate about that.
Yeah, he's very good, and I have a lot of respect for him. I don't mind giving his name. I'm talking about Sheldon Neely.
Yes, that would have been the one I would have given.
Yeah, he's quite a. Yeah. I hope he hears that. I have a lot of respect.
He probably will hear this.
I have a lot of respect for him. Sure. This guy always ends his program with I wants to take his mom out to breakfast.
Sheldon is one of the people over the years from now will run for higher office and will pick up both the Democrat and Republican.
Yes, and I can support him. I don't support a whole lot of politicians, but I can definitely support him. Let's talk. We're running out of time. We get so much into our conversation because there's so many things I want to know about you, Henry. Because I have so much respect for your legacy. Your legacy. I'm going to demand. I'm not here. I'm assuming I'm going to survive Henry, but I'm going to demand a statue be built or something. Clio. How long have we been on the school board out there in Clio?
28 years.
28 years. And that's been continuous.
Yes.
So every year, what is it? Every 2 years? Every 4 years?
Every 4 years.
4 years. So you've been elected 7 times.
Yes, 7 times. And I've been the president 7 times.
President 7 times. 7 times president.
Yes.
Wow. Henry,
That says a lot about the Clio people, by the way.
We're running out of time. Let me ask you, this election that is coming up Tuesday of next week.
Yeah.
Do you have any 18 candidates?
Yes.
And when you have 18 candidates, do you see that as when I see that many candidates running, is either about opportunism or is about dissatisfaction? So 18 candidates, does that say to you that there's a lot of discontentment with the leadership, or is this just this opportunistic kind of investment we're seeing here, where people are kind
I think it's opportunistic.
So you think Karen
a lot of that is fluff. A lot of candidates, I read the documents what they're out proposing, and a lot of it's fluff. They haven't sat down and thought about the issues. But they haven't taken a survey of what people want, what they believe, where they want to go. They just talk stuff that sounds good to them. Now, I think that there are some candidates in there that may not have a real stellar background. They talk with some good common sense. I think that Woodson does. I think that the gentleman that served on the Flint Board of Education does. I think Mayor Weaver is going to be tough to beat, because if you look at, you line her up against the platform and the what people expect from her in this community, you will show that she has grown for the year and a half that she was in office.
Okay. Well, we're going to leave it on that note right there, Henry.
Is it over already?
Over already. The time is just kind of passed by us because we get into these animated conversations, and I always enjoy what you have to say. We are going to have you back. Okay. Okay, and this is going to be a wrap for us. Thank you for listening for the last 57 minutes. I want to thank all the members of AllPointsTV.com, our studio agents here, and also those at 92.1. See you next week. Until that time, don't forget to follow your dream, because if you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.